So this is the arrow I'm going to be running this year for my whitetail hunts. This is 720 grains of total arrow weight. And I'm going to go in detail exactly how I got here and just basically a regurgitation of the ranch fairy process. 20.8% FOC. This thing, get fucked. So first things first, before anything and everything, you gotta make sure bow is in tune. No candling, no weird rest. That's the first and foremost thing you must do before you start this process. Then, after your bow's in tune, you can start this process. To start this process, you need bare shaft arrows. You can do fletch, but Ranch Fairy recommends bare shaft. Last year, and this kinetic pierced 300 spine. It was a great arrow, 595 grains total arrow weight, but I had to drop my bow weight. So my draw weight went down to 64 pounds, and it's because of 300 spine. This year, I'm able to run a 250 spine, and I'm running that because I wanted to do a 70-pound draw weight. So you get your arrows. I'm running a Sirius Apollo this year. It's a 204 diameter. Last year, I ran these gold tips that were a 166. I find no difference in diameter so far. Anyways, this is a 10.68 grains per inch arrow. I have my arrows cut to 28 inches, carbon to carbon. Once you have them cut, you're going to square the ends. Squaring the ends is simple. You're going to take a Sharpie, color the ends, put them on a squaring tool, and just square them. Once they're nice and square, you'll be able to turn and see that the insert sits flush with the arrow. And you're going to do the nock side as well. You're going to square the nock, put your nock in, make sure the nock is flush with the arrow. Last year I just shot and saw which one looked like it was flying straight out of the bow. And you'll be able to tell for the most part. I was a little OCD this year and wanted to shoot them through paper to really take your field points. I run 100 grains all the way up to 300 grains. Some just do 200 to 300 and some do just 100 to 200. Now once you have both ends flush and ready to go, you're going to take the standard insert. 100 grain standard insert comes with these Sirius Apollos. You're going to throw it in and glue it in. Now you can insert tune them real quick, which I'll take one arrow like this one, and since I already had my broadheads that I was going to run this year, 250 grain cutthroat, I screwed it into my insert, had not glued it in yet, put it in and spun the arrow until this broadhead ran flush with the arrow. There was no wobble up front. Marked it, glued that standard insert in. So it was already insert tuned. So once you run them either through paper or just shoot them out of your bow, you'll find a couple that will work. Some won't work, and you'll notice right away. Like this year, 100 grain field point with 100 grain insert was not working. It threw a crazy tear, as well as I could just see it come off the bow. Very, very wonky. Last year, only 1 point worked for me. This was the 48.5 grain insert and outsert coupled system here, and only the 250 grain field point worked. So sometimes it's only one, sometimes it's multiple. This year, 250 grains with 100 grain insert, and then 275 grain and 300 grain with the 100 grain insert all worked for me. Then it was the process of finding just which one I absolutely wanted. So I tinkered for a couple weeks and ran 250, 275, and 300 and kept doing that until I finally found the one that was perfect. I would go to the range and shoot at 20, 30 yards, again, all bare shaft. And finally I found out 275 with 100 grain insert was the money maker. But the situation for me was I already had these 250 grain cutthroat broadheads, and that's what I was going to run this year. So I just had to do a bit of math and figure out what kind of insert I would need. So doing simple math, 275 field point up front with 100 grain insert was 375 grains up front. So I needed to achieve that with a 250 grain cutthroat broadhead. Well, 375 minus 250 equals 125. Go to ethics.com, type in my arrow, which is this Apollo, and it comes up with everything, any component I need. Well, I needed a insert at 125 grains. They had one from 125 to 200. They're adjustable. Each slot takes off 25 grains, so I ordered them, got them in the mail, cut the slot that would take it down to 125 grains, I cleaned it up, and thus you have the 125 grains that I needed up front. Now before I glued it in, I went back, I put the arrow on the arrow spinner and made sure that the arrow was flush. If it wasn't, I would turn the insert until that broadhead would run flush with the arrow. The purpose of nock tuning is just to give it that extra oomph to make it fly perfect. You can nock tune through paper. This nock tuning I did through paper. Last year I just shot it in Target and it'll stick a certain way. And then you just turn the nock and it'll slowly put it back to center, or it'll throw it more out, and then that's when you know you gotta turn it back. Start on the landscape you kind of would understand and know. So I always start label up, and I even my nock to be label up. And you shoot it through paper. If it kicks crazy, I just take a quarter turn. Shoot it again. If it kicks crazier, quarter turn. If it's getting good, I'll still do a quarter turn, and then if it goes more out on that tear, then I'll bring it back, and it works. And then you start making micro adjustments. Once you find it in between those 2 points, you make micro adjustments until it sits perfect. Now some arrows just won't nock tune perfectly. That's where the fletchings come in. But all this does, this hole from insert and out before the fletchings get on, just creates a perfect arrow flight, thus making less drag on these fletchings to correct your arrow, and you lose less velocity. Once you have a perfect arrow flight after you've nock tuned, then you can start to fletch. I did a 4-fletch this year because I've again watched the Ranch Fairy, and many others have come out and said 4-fletch works better with the single bevel. So I 4-fletched this year. 4-fletch was a little more difficult than a 3-fletch using the Arizona Easy Fletch, but it works. You just use the cock vane on that Arizona Easy Fletch and fletch them one at a time. Fletch one, do 4 clicks of a turn, fletch the next, and it works out. And then your arrow will be running absolutely perfect with no need for the fletchings to correct, thus creating no drag and more velocity. So that's a quick nitty-gritty summary of how I've gotten to 720 grains. I really just tripped and fell into it, but per the Ashby reports, Dr. Ashby says 650 grains of total arrow weight is your bone breaking threshold. So if you surpass 650 grains, you're breaking bone. And this definitely is going to be a bone breaker at 720 grains, 20% FOC. Again, bare shaft, square both ends, make them flush, insert tune, find your perfect weight up front, figure out what broadhead weight you're going to run, then do your math, figure out your insert weight, insert tune the rest of them, go over to your nock in, shoot them. If it's perfect, you don't got to nock tune, but if it's still a little wonky, turn and burn until you find that perfect nock tune, which makes it, when this thing gets to that animal, whatever you're shooting at, hog, elk, for me, whitetail, it's going to be flying perfectly, and it's going to penetrate, and it's going to pass through, because it's not going to come in all wonky and hit it sideways and have to correct. It's going to be absolutely perfect. And I'll be all, go check out the Ranch Fairy, go read the Ashby reports. If you see someone on YouTube telling you, hey, 400 grains is better, 350 grains is better, what they're talking about over there is a load of crap. Just know that there's statistical data out there on these kind of arrows, while those guys that are spewing that stuff just say from experience. So for me, I'm a data guy. I'm going to take the data and not just someone say. Again, Ranch Fairy, read the Ashby reports, up your arrow mass. And if you don't up your arrow mass, at least do the process so you're having perfect arrow flight, and then you stop wounding shit and you start killing it. Can't wait to put this stuff out there at a whitetail and have it on camera, and just we can all view together of what these arrows do. I'm super excited. Super heavy arrows. This is Hunting in Misery. The best memories happen in a form of misery.